first one here is, this is the front end. And then Penny actually came up with a new design that he will be pulling too. So this will it'll have all the same information, but it'll look a lot sharper. Come up, we see I'm connected, and I pre-populated all of the fields so we can go through those. You can see here, UMA LSP token interface. This app helps you to deploy and distribute UMA LSP tokens using Superfluid's super tokens. It tells you with the supported LSP tokens, supported networks, and then different info links here. All right, and I can see we're starting on the launch tab. The distribute tab is something we're still working on, and with the compromise in Superfluid contracts right now, it's not necessarily a bad thing that we can't use that currently. But like I said, once all that gets fixed, it's every intention of ours to go ahead and have this fully operational, so we can use this thing to launch our own KPI options or KPI options for anyone else. All right, so going through the parameters, we start with the mandatory parameters. Here you can see I'm getting a lot of feedback from someone. Are we able to hear over all that noise? Thank you.
Yeah.
Parent. So pair name, SU int. You can see I filled in the pair name with basically the expiration date. I filled in the expiration timestamp, which would be the very end of the epic, right? The last day expiring at midnight. I have filled in the total collateral per pair, which we defined as 0.6 UMA. And here we're using the general KPI price identifier. Now, there's all sorts of different price identifiers that we would have to choose from. For us, this one works best because we're not using like a UTVL or any kind of like a price metric, right? We have to define it, and this is something new actually too. Before, you would either have to use a price identifier that was in the library, right? A general KPI wasn't in there. So you'd have to choose one that was already in the library, or you would have to implement like a custom UMIP price identifier to fit yours. And that's what like Clayton and Britt had to go through when they did the UDAO. Okay, moving on. The long synth name, the long synth symbol, the short synth name, and the short synth symbol. So every time you mint KPI options, you put in collateral, and then you're gonna mint two different tokens. You're gonna mint a long token and a short token, equal amounts. Here you can see our final collateral will not be Matic, it will be UMA. Once UMA is an accepted collateral currency. But for now, I've just put in Matic, and you can see there's a drop-down screen here where you can choose your different currencies as well. The financial product that we're using is a KPI option linear. And even though linear doesn't, as Vari has pointed out before, linear doesn't exactly express a step up or step-by-step payout function like we're using, it is the best option we have to choose from here. I didn't put anything for the proposer reward, but we could enter a number in here if we wanted to incentivize somebody to propose a price, propose a value. Optimistic Oracle proposer bond. So if someone wants to dispute the price, they have to put up a bond, and they would have to put up $1,500 worth. Optimistic Oracle liveness time. This time is in seconds right here. So 86,400 seconds equals 24 hours. Okay.
Can I
Moving
step in
on.
real quick? The
Yes,
1,500
please.
will be, you would put that in the amount of coins or the tokens, I'm sorry, to make $1,500 worth.
So it would be 1,500. Yeah, it doesn't allow you to put in
USDC? Oh, okay.
it doesn't allow you to put in anything but a number here.
No, I meant you would figure out the amount of tokens it would take to equal $1,500 of the token that you're using your collateral.
Okay, got you. Makes sense. Thanks, Deadcoin.
Should we pause maybe for questions or inputs?
Yeah, because we're about to jump onto the next screen. That sounds like a good idea, Rathers.
Awesome. I think I was gonna tiny suggestion just from like a appearance perception or appearance perspective is the long synth symbol is what we distribute, correct?
That is correct, right? So the contract creator holds on to the short tokens, and those are the tokens that hold all the collateral. And then you distribute the long tokens, and those are the tokens that you work to increase the collateral worth.
Got it.
And then the long token holders use those tokens to redeem against the short tokens at the end.
Yeah. I guess in that case, I would.
What was that, Rathers? I'm sorry, you cut off, Rathers.
I think that's Penny Panda trying to speak. Penny
Yeah.
Panda, maybe go out, then come back in.
Yeah, there you go.
I have a question in the meantime. We're obviously deploying our own KPI options. This interface is the UMA interface. Will our options interface be segregated from UMA's, or will it share the same interface as displayed here?
So this interface that we're looking at right here actually is not UMA's interface. This is
okay.
a front end that a developer named Rao built for us.
Gotcha.
Right. So it actually makes it much easier than going through UMA's GitHub, assuming that it's functional, right?
All right. Thank you. That answers my question.
But part of the reason I also, just to clear up, I wanted to use this even though it's not functional, because it's a great display of like what you have to, the parameters that you have to enter to build a KPI option. So whether you are using this or like doing it through GitHub, it would still call for all this information.
Hey, Inalittlewhile, can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Well, I was just quickly mentioning earlier is that for long synth symbol, I was just.
You cut out again, Raiders. So Raiders, maybe you can drop, if you have a question, you can drop it in the text hub, since you're not coming through. But also, I'll point out that this isn't launched, right? So any of this information, like it's still up for change, and we actually can't deploy a contract until we get this, right? Until we can put UMA here, which will be in about 10 days, roughly. We hope, assuming the vote passes, which we assume it will. Okay, I'm going to move on in the interest of time here to the next section. All right, now we have our FPL parameters. It asks for a lower bound. So by putting in 0.15 here, what I'm basically saying is we're not starting at 0. So this is a way for us to say that we're going to start with like 3 integrations, basically. Since each integration we've determined, we'll get to that, each integration we've determined is worth 0.05 UMA. The upper bound is 0.6. That's the maximum that it can pay out, and that is the maximum amount of collateral. Now we move on to the mandatory ancillary data parameters. The number of integration metric here. The number of integrations the SuperUMAN DAO can deliver. That would be our metric. Through the endpoint, we have a green light list URL. So we'll have to provide a URL here that points to a green light list like we've created in the past, where we when we get an integration, we put it up and we say, hey, does this count? And we vote on it. So we're going to have to provide that information in this space. Now we move on to method. This will be the implementation file or the implementation doc that I'm going to share next. And that will be the URL that points to that. And I put an example, the SUDAO forum URL, or it would be a GitHub URL. Key, our key is total integrations. The interval is saying resolve to the last available daily data updated at midnight UTC. So that's saying basically to look at the very end, right? At the last data available when it expires, because we have it expiring at midnight. Optional ancillary data parameters. Fallback. If the green light list is down or inconclusive, fall back to the unresolved parameter. Now, if we go back to the unresolved parameter, or if we go down to the unresolved parameter, we can say setting unresolved, and this is something I'm going to need to, the math isn't perfect here. I want to point out, I need to change this, and it needs to change to represent the lower bound of 0.15, right? So for this example, I said, and we need to use scaling here. So setting unresolved to 300, representing scaled thousands of UMA. When FPL had lower bound of 150, an upper bound of 600 would result in KPI option holders receiving, and then you have your little math equation here, 300 minus 150 divided by 600 minus 150 equals 33% of the maximum payout in unresolved state. So that said, if that basically says if voters looked and were not able to return any data, these are some instructions of how much the DAO should pay out to the token holders. I don't have anything for aggregation. We don't have any scaling that's involved here in our payout function, and no real rounding to worry about since we're not like recording a price or TVL. And then the final field before you deploy, you would just look up and see what GWEI is, what GWEI is, and because you probably wouldn't want it to fail, right? Enter that here, deploy, will bring up your MetaMask. It would give you a Matic amount and then accept. I'll stop there for any further questions.
I have
Hey,
one.
oh, sorry. Hey,
Oh, sorry.
Don't all jump in at the same time.
Just quick. We've got like a bonus, that will bring you up to 0.7, right?
We
How
do.
would that work?
We're going to be moving right onto that here, and that's going to be described. That's going to be described in our implementation doc.
Okay.
So I'm keeping my eye on the time. We're 15 minutes in. It seems like we're doing pretty well. So let me jump over.
hey, just gonna ask one question.
Sorry, I know you have something.
Yeah, no, just since you mentioned previously that you've launched a couple of test contracts, what have been the Matic costs that you've seen for the transactions?
Okay, so I went over this a little, and what I've seen so far is when I don't want to deploy because I've done a bunch, and I'm also conscious of what's going on with Superfluid right now. But it's been about like 1.5 Matic, but it calls. I think it needs 2 because it brings up 2, one right after the other. So I believe the first transaction is to like set the contract or to create the contract, and then there's another transaction to like set the long short pairs or something like that. But that may be something that Penny and I need to look into as well and make sure that that's working properly.
Sure, sounds good. And just to be clear, because you mentioned the Superfluid bit, this up to deploy, it only does the UMA side of things, which is creating the contract and minting the tokens. It doesn't do anything beyond that, like wrapping it for Superfluid, etc. It would be separate, right?
That's correct. So if we do go over to the distribute page, and the problem I'm having here is when I moved over to this distribute page, right? I already launched like 3 different contracts on Polygon. And so then I say, okay, so I want to mint them now. And I came here and it's not reading them. And you can see I'm connected right now. And I have 3 live contracts, right? And it's telling me I haven't launched any LSP tokens yet. So that's where we're stuck, and that's what we're working on.
Got it. Yep. Awesome. Thanks. That's all I had from my side. Just wanted to understand the cost, which is, yeah, I mean, 1 to 2 Matic is like really cheap. That's like roughly $4 ish.
Yeah, that's really good. I'm pretty happy about that. Okay, so let me pause just in case there are any. I'll move back to the launch page. Any other questions people had? I cleared out all of my information, of course, but I have it. All right, I'm going to move on to our.
Oh, sorry, I just realized. I just remembered. There was a discussion previously in maybe the earlier version of the UI. I'm not sure, but the intent was you could set up the parameters and you get a unique URL for the parameters so that URL can be shared. Has that been removed, or is that like in a different? Sorry, is that not part of this version?
No, it is, but now that I've cleared out all the things, I can't go to the next field where it is. However, we'll cover that as well.
Okay, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
So you didn't see the URLs because I just said this is where we need to put the URL, like in those when we covered those fields, Rathers. But let's go to here. You'll understand better too when I come here. All right. So
Go ahead.
now we're looking at the implementation document, right? And so we start with the basic summary. So implementation doc describes the method in which the UMA voters can verify and validate the terms of the SUN to KPI options contract. This description includes motivation, data specifications, definitions, KPI option parameters, technical specifications, rationale, implementation, and security considerations. And I want to thank Clayton's on the call. I'll let you know and you probably recognize what a lot of this language you're looking at, but yeah, I borrowed this from the a lot of this language came from the UDAO price identifier that Britt and Clayton worked on together. Okay, so motivation, the primary motivation for the development of SUN KPI options is to allow the SuperUMAN DAO to incentivize members to continue their mission statement. In essence, to be rewarded for their efforts in creating cool shit with other protocols. Furthermore, SUN KPI options help direct DAO member efforts to align with the mission of making markets universally acceptable in conjunction with the UMA DAO and Risk Labs. Using integrations as a key metric directly benefits the UMA protocol because it encourages the community to build relationships in the broader DeFi community with the intention of providing tools that may be useful to teams who are currently unaware of what UMA has to offer. This creates a win-win across the board because it allows the SU DAO to showcase UMA products, which can then help other protocols to complete their goals. By establishing the terms of a qualifying integration, it allows for the community to reach out in a way that aligns with the current priorities of the UMA protocol, attracting attention to our strongest products and encouraging teams to test out a wide variety of use cases. Data specifications. The SU DAO will maintain a green light list of qualified integrations, which will be readily available upon request. This list will include details that voters need to assess the validity of the integration, e.g. launch and funding date of the contract, so that voters can verify it is within the specified time frame of the current KPI option. Anyone can propose adding an integration to the list. Each integration will be added one at a time after it has been discussed in the Greenlight channel and SuperUMAN Discord. UMA token holders are encouraged to participate in these discussions in preparation for the formal proposal settlement. And here we describe which ones will be eligible. So an integration will have been achieved when a DAO or other organization funds an LSP contract, which includes but is not limited to KPI options, call put options, range bonds, success tokens, and I added protected tokens. Definitions. So we were describing some of the different terms that we're using here. I won't spend too much time, and I provided the link in the text hub, everybody. So you're welcome to go and read through this whole thing as well on your own time. We have definitions for product categories, for funding, for what a DAO is, organization. I know Deadcoin had suggested adding right here, adding protocol. We have ambiguity considerations. It may be unclear whether new projects with illiquid tokens meet the criteria of a DAO or an organization. We wouldn't want to exclude a valuable integration type from inclusion. This is a category we will leave to UMA token holders to evaluate. So as a guiding principle, a qualifying DAO is part of a good faith project. A disqualifying DAO would be one with no genuine attempt at a company or organization. So we have some instructions there of how to kind of like go about deciding whether or not an integration qualifies. Any ambiguities around the question of is it a DAO will be discussed in the Greenlight channel or the SuperUMAN Discord. It is important to the design of this implementation doc to invite UMA token holders to participate in these discussions in order to help establish broad consensus on questions that don't have black and white answers. Okay, Neon Demon, max integration bonus. As seen below in the SUINT KPI option parameters and ancillary data section, this implementation doc allows for the deployer of the contract to include a bonus parameter. Because the SuperUMAN DAO is elected to include a bonus option, we will specify the max number of integrations required to qualify for the bonus and the exact value of that bonus should that requirement be met. To be consistent throughout this implementation doc, the SuperUMAN DAO or any other holders of the SUINT long token will qualify for the bonus if they achieve the upper boundary of 10 integrations. We have some additional notes. This basically says that like if UMA launches contracts for themselves, like for UMA token holders, that doesn't qualify. Or if we launch another contract of KPI options for ourselves, that doesn't qualify. So we're encouraging that, keeping the encouragement that we're working with other protocols to launch these things. Contracts included are not limited to Ethereum. So I'm describing that we can build contracts, or we're describing that we can build contracts on any of the different chains that UMA is running on. All qualified integrations are described as base integrations. A qualifying integration has no high or low value requirements in US dollar coin or otherwise. They should be consistent with the spirit of adding value to the wider UMA DAO, Risk Labs, and SuperUMAN ecosystems. So that's kind of important. I wrote that, and that kind of means like I'm saying that like any kind, there's no like minimum collateral to qualify, but that the qualifying determination should be that we're doing it in the spirit of community building, as it was described above. The applied time frame for this implementation doc will be specified in ancillary data. The green light list should not be considered the only source of truth. So we have a lot of different language just around how to understand how we are describing this whole process to work. SUINT KPI option parameters and ancillary data. Now keep in mind when we visit at the end the volatility implementation file example, since we don't have our own for me to show you yet, that file is a lot shorter. It doesn't need to include all this information that we have on here. The metric and method will be included as ancillary data when the contract is deployed and will provide additional details and instructions to help voters correctly identify the number of qualifying integrations. The following set of data describes the parameters of the SUINT KPI option. So now this is all this information is the stuff that we just went over. Most of it. I'm getting a lot of feedback. I don't know if that's you again, Poopster,
Hey,
or
Clayton,
somebody else.
can you hear us? Hey, Clayton, you're not on mute. Heads up.
Oh, server meet the boss.
Yeah, server
It
move.
ain't me in a little while. Stop trying to blame
No,
me.
not you this time. Can you hear me better now that I'm not on my phone, Poopster? Okay,
Mhm.
so back to talking about what we were looking at before on the front end, on the user interface. Most of this, all right, I'm gonna stop because I can't hear now.
We'll just have to remember to unmute him later. Unmute Clayton later.
Thanks, appreciate it. All right, so we have a start timestamp. The start timestamp is something that we can put in. So if we wanted to include some integrations that had already happened, we could have a start timestamp that goes like retroactive, basically. And we haven't discussed whether or not we should do this yet, but we will. We also ought to consider too that I've already included, or we've already included, like a floor that's going to pay out, right, no matter what. So I'm not sure if we need to implement this at all. But then we have the other information. We have the pair name, the expiration timestamp. That all this was taken from the user interface, the same information. The collateral per pair, the price identifier, it's a general KPI. So yep, it's just going over everything again. Here you can see there's a change. I changed it from the Matic to the UMA, collateral token. Financial product, we're using the KPI option linear. All the information brought over. The difference that we have here, there's some extra ancillary data. We're describing max integrations as 10, and we're describing a bonus value of 0.1 UMA and floor base integrations. Okay, if a contract deployer incorrectly formats, this just basically says how we're going to pass it. If we're this would be if we're not using the UI, we will have to pass this through the GitHub as ancillary data. This part is if a contract deployer incorrectly formats or simply does not provide one of the parameters above, it will default to the following values. This means that if no ancillary data is present, the value returned will be 0. Right? So if there's nothing at all, then the ancillary data isn't entered. Then no, they can't even get to the document at all to even read it or know where to go to find the information. Then that says that our KPI options would expire valueless. Technical specifications, price identifier name, base. So now we're getting into like, this is what is going to actually be included in the final file that would be an UMA that we would do a pull request uh, for the UMA GitHub. So we have the price identifier name, the base, the bonus, intended collateral currency. We wouldn't do any rounding. I need to change that. That would be no rounding. Rationale. Linear scaling is used for sake of ease for contract deployment and for voters. Each base integration has a value of 0.05 UMA per KPI option and adds up in a step-by-step payout function. Should SUINT token holders achieve the max base integrations of 10, a bonus of 0.1 UMA will be added. Another way put, the 10th ceiling integration will have a base integration value with a multiplier of 3. Allowing for a specified minimum payout is intended to account for the integration that occurred prior to launch in an effort to reward the community for hard work leading up to the launch of this KPI option. I know this is getting long, guys, but we're almost done here. Minimum payout will be established in ancillary data via the floor integrations parameter. The decision to limit qualifying integrations to the LSP contract and highlight the listed product types was made in order to focus the community and align incentives with the strategic goals of the organization. Setting it up to allow for all qualified launches to be counted throughout the period rather than just at the time of expiry helps to ensure that we are not missing out on any integrations that might expire before the KPI option does. Having a customized starting timestamp allows a contract deployer, and this is what I talked about before, so we could include integrations that happen prior to the launch of this KPI option. Finally, the rationale for choosing integrations was to emphasize building DAO-to-DAO relationships and wider relationships between the UMA DAO, SuperUMAN DAO, and the wider DeFi community. Okay, now the implementation, and this is going to have to be included in our final file. Step 1, refer to the green light list for finalized information on all qualified integrations. Assign 0.05 points for each integration on the list. Step 2, if SUINT token holders qualify for the bonus, it will add an exact value amount in UMA to the ceiling integration. This is described in ancillary data as the bonus value. Assign 0.15 points, 1 base and 2 bonus, to the 10th and maximum integration only. Step 3, tally up the total number of base points as well as the number of bonus points. Add base points plus bonus points from the step above for the total number of points. This is the value you will return. If the value returned would be lower than floor integrations, use the value provided by this field in ancillary data. So if we only got like 1 or 2, we would end up getting 3, basically, is what that's saying, since we put in 0.15 as the floor value. Now we just go through some security considerations. I won't read all this stuff to you guys just because it's getting long. And that's it. Now, show you the final example.
A quick 2 questions from my side. Is that okay? Or you want to
Yeah,
wait till
sure.
after that?
No, sure. Let me go back here and go ahead, Rathers. We're still doing good with time. We're only 33 minutes in.
Okay. So I think just a question from my side regarding the products that you've identified. I
Sure.
think it's if you could scroll up. So the only reason I bring that up is like I mentioned for example manager DAO or possibly even Poapathon, we might come up with our own version of the LSP contract parameters such that it technically is like a different new product of its own, which wouldn't really count as any one of these. So I would I just want to check that when you say in the line above that, funds and LSP contract, which includes but is not limited to, that covers us in those instances, correct?
I would think it does. And I would think we need to also keep in mind that any of these products, including ones that maybe aren't on this list, like you're talking about, right? We'll need to go to the green light and then be discussed. And
Sure.
I think that as long as voters, I think that the larger question is probably is if someone who didn't know anything about what we're doing came and read this, would they read it to be like, well, that does qualify in my mind as an integration because it's in the spirit of building with other protocols, and in the security considerations, I think it does kind of go over some of that too. Well, actually, I didn't read that at the end, but
okay, cool. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that no one would want to dispute that because the line above does mention including but not limited to. So as long as that would be I think we would win any dispute if it was brought up that XYZ integration doesn't count for these products. So yeah.
we have I like this language too, and this is part of the reason why I wanted to keep a lot of this stuff. I really liked a lot of the stuff that Clayton and Britt put in here. Like this. Additionally, there is the potential for ambiguities to present that have not been considered at the time of writing. In this case, it will be up to the DMV to determine the resolution of those ambiguities. It is possible that over the course of the KPI options, SuperUMANs could determine there are other products they would like to prioritize that are not defined in this implementation doc. In that case, another KPI option can be launched to include that product. So that's, I think that I read this as
we wouldn't need to do that step
if it's
because of the line above.
If it's not an UMA product, right?
Got it. Makes
It's
sense.
not. We're not working with UMA now. We're trying to incentivize some other product, right? So we'd have to launch our own different KPI option to do that. Are there any concerns? And like I said, we still have time, right? So we can change this document as well. And this is just as much as this is a learning session for everyone else, it's also a learning session for myself and for Deadcoin and the people who have been working on this too, right? So, yep.
Got it. I think
This
the
is by
second.
no means is this our final draft that we'll be using when we launch.
Awesome. I think the very simple second question was just, do we have language included in this that covers whether multiple integrations from one protocol of the same product still only counts as one? I remember that being there in prior versions of this. So I'm assuming that's there in this as well.
I do believe it is in there.
Okay.
Cool.
Yep. That's it.
No, I think it was in the ambiguities or something, but we'll definitely have to make sure that it is if it isn't. So yeah, good point, Rathers.
Sure. Yeah. No, just I remember mentioning that as like someone asked, how does it work? And I remember mentioning that that's how it's set before. And someone suggested, why not make it, if it's more than two, it counts more than one. So I think maybe maybe some folks want to have a discussion on that, but I just wanted to ask if it exists to begin with to have that discussion. So yeah.
Cool. Let me just show this final example of how Volatility did theirs. Right. So this is a live. Obviously, people who know Volatility know that they already have a live KPI option, right? So this is the file that is has been pulled, and you can see This is the implementation file that they submitted for their KPI options. And you can see how shorter it is, how much shorter it is. It has a title, just a quick summary, the ancillary data that's passed. And this is why it's so much shorter. Because right here, they provided the link, right, to their document that, and also you can see it right here, right? So you could go to the volatility forum and read up all the stuff that we have that we just went over. So all we need to include in our final file that we do a pull request for when we launch our options is describe our title, summary, intended ancillary data, and the implementation. And the rest they can voters can follow and go find, because we've also passed it along in the ancillary data here. And that's what I wanted to show. Now, at this point, I wanted to stop the presentation because there's still so much that's undefined. And I felt that like having a follow-up learning session to this, once we've actually gone and deployed our contract, so we can start up at the point of like basically where we left off here. We'll be able to show this file, right, that is now implemented, and we'll be able to go through the whole process of deploying a contract, and then what it takes to mint the KPI options and then distribute them. So that would be part 2. Okay, I'm done.
Awesome.
We have 20 minutes left over. Sorry for the long-winded reading and
Yeah, I'm
everything.
sorry. I have a question.
Sure.
What parameters define the numbers of options for the long and short pairs to be maintained?
So that is kind of a little bit of math you have to do. And I could show you if we went to right here. Oh, sorry, let me go back to the interface here, right? And we look where it says collateral prepare. So we described this as 0.06, or I'm sorry, 0.6 UMA is how much collateral prepare. So maybe an easier way to say is this: if you said in this field 1 and your collateral was US dollar coin, then if you minted 1,000 of these, you would get 1,000 long tokens and 1,000 short tokens. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Okay, but now if we were to put in like we're doing 0.6 UMA, right? Well, then it would depend on how much collateral we put in, and you would do the math, and it would tell you a number, and that would be the same exact number, because you always will have an equal amount of long and short tokens minted.
Okay, sounds right.
Is that everybody understand that? That's an important point to understand about KPI options. Or the long short pair, right? In particular, because the long short pair is describing that you have a long token and a short token.
Should I give the example? I mean, should I give an example, which is currently what is the planned amount of UMA to be collateralized for this?
Sure. That might help people. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's currently planned at 45,000 UMA to be collateralized for the KPI options that we're going to be distributing. That is based on the budget proposal that's currently up on governance. So anyone can go there and see that that's like what is the value and how that was calculated. But yeah, it's 45,000 UMA. And yeah, you can go ahead and sort of share what the calculation for that would then be in a little while.
Right. So if we took the 45,000 UMA and we collateralized, we're not even collateralizing one of those, right? Per pair, we're only doing 0.6. So we would get, I don't have the math, if I could do it here on my phone real quick.
I can't hear Rathers every time he talks. I don't know why. I can't hear anybody but you. I heard Poopster.
Hey, can you hear me, Deadcoin?
Do you have him accidentally on mute? Remember that happened to us before.
No, I checked. I don't know what's going on. I'm not going to back out. I don't want to ruin this. So apologies.
No, I hear you. He's coming through good for me.
Yeah,
I've had issues like this before too, Deadcoin. Where I can only,
I think
or
I
I
have some
can't.
Discord issue. You can let them know.
Yeah. Rather says he thinks he has some issues. Once again, Deadcoin. I've had this issue with certain users before too, so it may just be Rather seems to think it's him.
It's a common Discord issue. It happens on the Bankless community calls all the time too. Sometimes somebody will be speaking and half the people can hear and the other half can't, or some sort of a mix. It's weird, common glitch.
So in this case, would it be 45,000 divided by? Would it be 45,000 divided by 0.6? Is that how we get the number?
Yeah, exactly. So if we go 4500. .6, right? Not 0.06, but 0.6.
Yeah,
gives us 75,000. So we would with 4,500. If we collateralized them at 0.6, that should give us 75,000 long tokens and 75,000 short tokens.
awesome. Hope that helped, Victor fella. I mean, if you can hear me.
That's messed up.
I can't hear, but I was going to say, I'm not sure what he's saying, so I don't know if I sound like a fool when I jump in here, but an easy way to do it, in my mind, to explain it simple terms would be collateral per pair. If UMA was worth $10, then 0.6 would be $6. So each KPI option would be worth $6 for the long and short tokens, right?
Yeah, I don't like to look at it though, to like in the price, especially the way we're doing it with integrations. I mean, I do, right? Everyone wants to know how much it's worth in dollar values, but that kind of confuses things because what we're really trying to get to is how many can we mint? How many can we mint with the collateral that we're putting in?
Yeah, that would depend
You
on
can
the
add
amount
that.
then, right?
You can add that how much each person gets will then be a factor of what the price
Because
is.
if I
Or
turn in
rather,
a,
how much each person.
Right.
Sorry.
That's right,
We'll
Rathers.
just-
He can't hear you. So Rathers was saying that the amount of KPI options that each person gets would be an easier way, right, for them to then use this to find out how much it's all worth.
Yeah, that's what I meant by amount. Okay, yeah, I see what you're talking about. Because right here,
Gotcha.
I'm thinking that I get 0.6 UMA per KPI option that I turn in is what it kind of, I mean, if you just look at it this way, the way it's up there.
So yeah, this isn't telling you how much you get, right? This is telling you how much we're collateralizing each one at. So you have to collateralize the contract to the full max value that it could possibly pay out at.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
this
here,
would be determined between the high and low, between the floor and the ceiling. It would also
correct.
0.15 and 0.6.
Correct. And so you can see that the collateral per pair is 0.6. There's no way I could put an upper value that was higher than 0.6, right? Because that would be mathematically impossible. We couldn't pay out more than what we collateralized it for.
Where does the bonus come in? How would you work that in?
The bonus is described in the implementation file.
Yes, but doesn't it have to be included in the overall collateralize amount?
And we'll have to pass that as ancillary data. But that's a good question. So if we're using this, we wouldn't be able to. We would have to describe that function somehow. Probably in the next. But
I think the question also was because I think earlier, Neon Damon, you mentioned it's 0.7, but the bonus is included within the 0.6.
Yes. It is.
Really?
Oh, is that
Okay.
what you're getting at? Yeah, that
Yeah.
was my understanding that it was only ever going to have a total of 0.6.
Yeah.
So if we have 10 integrations maximum, and each one of those integrations is worth 0.05 UMA, we get 10, that equals 0.5 UMA. So we still have 0.1 that left to make the 0.6 for that bonus.
Okay, I misunderstood. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm just making. I'm glad I like people asking questions because then it makes sure that I verify that I didn't misunderstand as well, right? So cool.
Great job, both of you.
Thanks, Poopster. There was another thing I was gonna point out about this that I just lost that thought though. Yeah, so there's a lot of different math, right? Like this is the collateral per pair. You're just saying like this could be anything. We could say, what if we said we're gonna each KPI option we want to have it be like up to worth 10 UMA. Remember on our previous ones, they were worth 3 UMA possible. And that would have been crazy to get to, right? But if we would have got like the bonus integrations, like a whole bunch of bonus integrations, we could have gotten like 3 UMA per KPI option. Now we're only collateralizing it for 0.6, and part of that is because of our budget, right? And so that we've done a bunch of math already. Rathers has, right? And trying to figure out like all these different compensation plans, and so yep.
Thanks a lot, Inalittlewhile.
Oh, I know the
Things
point.
are very handy.
So this is what I was going to answer in your question, Neon Demon, is how does this UI, and I'll tell you how does it answer that bonus? Like basically you're not seeing the ancillary data on here. So if we filled all this out and we went to the next one, there's a field where you have to put in the link to your implementation file. And following that link, it describes the bonus. Does that make sense?
Indeed. And that would put it on our GitHub, right? Make a link to the GitHub. That's where we think it's going to live, this implementation doc.
Yeah, so that's another point of discussion is, and then one that Deadcoin and Penny and I were kind of throwing around, so it's good to bring it up to everybody, is like, should we have our own GitHub like for this SU DAO?
Yes.
I was talking to Penny Panda just today about that.
Yeah.
Having our own GitHub as well as our own Vercel.
I think the point of where it lives is, and I talked to Rainus about this, and he said it can live anywhere. You can host that file or that document anywhere, but it has to show the versioning. And that makes perfect sense, right? So like halfway through your KPI option program, you don't go change stuff that can't be seen, right? Like the changes can't be seen. So like anything that happens on GitHub, you can see. Like if we went and changed that, like say like a couple of weeks before it expired, and changed some rules and stuff, well, you would see all those changes, right? So voters could go look and go, but why did they change that? Right? That's not, you can't change the rules right in the middle, and then they could return a value of, whatever the fallback, or decide to return a value of 0.
I think on the next lesson, we should show how to actually do the pull request on GitHub and how that works. Explain how it starts off a little bit. It would help everybody become accustomed to that.
Absolutely. And that was a lot of my thought on this. And we had so much information here to go over that I hesitated to try to introduce that this time. And I think there's still some points to clear up here too, like, and with some help from the DAO and everybody else, right? Like just to get the file perfect, to make sure that our design is perfect. Yeah, so that would be great. That would be a great another learning session once we're all live. Our KPI option contract is live and minted and distributed. Is that something that people would be interested in?
Absolutely. Yes.
Cool. I'm going to come back
Hey, just a
to.
quick question from my side before you moved on from that.
Sure. Let me go back there.
Yeah, just very quickly. What's the tooltip for early expiration? I'm not saying that we need it, but just I like how does what does
Let's see.
checking
What does
that
it
box?
say?
Yeah. Oh, okay. It just basically means that someone can propose a question before the expiry, I'm assuming, as I understand how it's supposed to work from the November update.
Yeah, like it's interesting if we look at the protected tokens, that has a good use case, right, for the
Yeah.
enable early expiration. Because say you got hacked, right? Then that's
Exactly.
when
Yeah.
you want to have that, right? So you can say, oh, they're expiring now, and I'm grabbing them back.
Yeah. We're looking to suggest that even for manager DAO. So yeah, it looks like it's just a checkbox that allows for that to happen.
Yeah, I think you just, yep.
Yeah.
You just enable it.
Sorry, just a request. Could you click on the dropdown for financial product? I just wanted to quickly check what was under that dropdown.
Yeah, sure.
Again, from the perspective that, okay. Yeah, again, from the
Yeah.
perspective of how do we define that question for them, it would likely be the binary option, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm
That
assuming that's
right.
what is for the protected token as well.
But that's like a binary, as I understand it, is like it's just a cut and dry yes or no
Yeah.
question.
Awesome.
Yeah, it either happened or it didn't.
Thanks. Sorry.
Yeah, but that's cool. No, thanks for bringing that up because you can see all the other
this is built.
Products that are included on here.
This is built for more than just KPI options. It was built for most of the LSP things we had available at the time. So I think that we'd have to add protected tokens depending on the perimeters. Once you select something on here like range bound, and that the parameters change to what you would need for that exact.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, so I think binary would work best for what's that is, but then also knowing that there are generic ones like binary and linear, etc., means that we can create custom versions of for ourselves for our integrations. Thanks.
Yeah, and here's another interesting field too, right? Is all the different collateral tokens that are on Polygon. And I think Penny was looking in to see if this like auto updates when new collateral currencies are added by UMIP, by voters, right? So we should see UMA on here soon as that one goes through. And one other one I thought was the price identifier. That's another interesting. So all of these price identifiers that you see on here are already in the UMA library, and you can choose them for for whatever type of contract you were selecting, right? Now when you have like KPI options, like I was saying, like ours are tracking integrations, right? Another good example is like maybe like how I don't know how to Poapathon I don't know, or Volatility did theirs, right? Like they didn't have like it was like task completions, right? Like one of their KPIs was to like create the second round of KPIs, right? Like so they had some crazy different like things that they said, oh, this needs to be completed, and then upon completion, that makes the KPI more valuable. So with the general price identifier, you can do that kind of stuff because what the general price identifier allows you to do is write up that implementation doc and host it where you describe all that the mechanics of how it works. And so you can see by following that train of thought, it makes it much easier because instead you used to have to go to GitHub, to UMA, right? Write a UMIP to describe a whole brand new price identifier, UMIP, to describe exactly, and then have that get accepted by UMA, have them go over, making sure all that data works properly. And now they're saying like, you don't have to do that. All you got to do is launch your tokens, right? And then include that implementation file. And so now the onus falls on, not on UMA as much, but on the projects themselves, right? To really be clear about how these things are going to be resolved by voters. Cool. I am going to
Awesome.
Stop screen sharing. That's all I got. We've got 2 minutes left. I hope this was a good learning session for everybody. Any last questions?